Now, Freddy, Stormy Daniels was in court yesterday with President Trump. Tell us how the day went.
Well, it was a very odd day. You had members of the Trump family sitting in court with Donald Trump there, listening to Stormy Daniels tell her very colourful anecdotes about what she alleges was a sexual encounter with Donald Trump. And a lot of this has been heard before. I mean, the sort of most sort of saucy bit that the tabloids love is that Stormy Daniels says that Donald Trump asked to be spanked with a copy of Forbes magazine, which may or may not be true. Who knows? What I think was very odd about it was that it doesn't really relate to the case at all. The case is about hush money, which which was paid to Stormy Daniels, so it is connected to it. But the criminal charges against Trump, the 34 criminal charges, all relate to falsification of business records for the purpose of committing a crime. We don't actually know what that crime is yet. The prosecution haven't yet revealed it, which is also odd. And so what you get a sense of is that this is a political trial, because really the judge, as much as he insists he isn't, is just allowing this to be aired because it's dirty laundry that embarrasses Trump at a time when he's trying to be re-elected. So when Team Trump kind of bang on about witch hunts and this being a weaponization of the justice system, they can sound ridiculous. But then you look at something like Stormy Daniels' testimony and you think, actually, maybe they have a point.
Jane, you've interviewed Stormy Daniels twice, I believe. How representative of the woman is the testimony that's going on right now? Is that similar, fits in with what it was like when you interviewed her twice?
Yes, I mean, Stormy Daniels is entirely herself at all times. And she seemed very much, she seemed nervous, I would say, at the beginning of giving her testimony. She was asked to slow down a couple of times by the court reporter because she was speaking very quickly. But again, that is quite typical of Stormy Daniels. She's got an awful lot to say. And she's a quick thinker and a quick speaker. She was cracking a lot of jokes for certainly the morning of giving her own testimony. She's a very witty woman. She's got an incredible sense of humour and quite a dark sense of humour, and that all came out in her testimony. And then when she was being cross-examined later on, again, she seemed very much like herself. It was a different kind of a Stormy that we saw coming out then. She was tough. She didn't give an inch when she was asked questions that other people might have found difficult to answer, like, do you hate Donald Trump? She answered with a straight yes. And when she was asked about the money that she owes Donald Trump for an unsuccessful defamation case, she said that she would rather go to jail than ever pay a penny to Donald Trump. So she was entirely herself. She wasn't trying to portray herself as anyone other than the woman I've known since 2018 on the stand. But I would just like to disagree slightly with what Freddy said about the nature of some of the anecdotes that were being told in court. I agree that this is a case about hush money. It's essentially a case about accountancy. It's not a case about a sexual encounter one night. But Donald Trump has always denied that he ever had sex with Stormy Daniels. So I do think that the events of that night and her version of events are important, because otherwise, he's essentially trying to portray her as a liar. And I think it's really important. Lots of people will have heard those stories before. Certainly if you've read her book, Full Disclosure, they are described in detail, in more lurid detail than we heard in court in that book. But I think it's very important in a case that is about who's telling the truth, and Donald Trump has always denied that incident never happened. I think it was very important for the jury to hear that.
And Freddie, I mean, how sympathetic do you think the American public are to Stormy Daniels? I imagine most people have a view on Donald Trump one way or another. I just wondered, do you think this kind of testimony we're hearing, and Jane there talks about Stormy Daniels being very sort of witty and personable in her testimony. I just wondered where American sympathies lie on this. Is it kind of shifting nature, or is it a very sort of polarised and set view on all of these kind of things?
Well, I mean, I don't think most Americans probably think that much about Stormy Daniels, but I think they probably would like her. She is likeable publicly. She is witty. I think she's a kind of she's got great hustle, which Americans respect. And I've written before that I think if Donald Trump didn't despise her now, he would respect the hustle, because that's what she does what he likes most, which is just chase the fame game at all costs, and often to great personal cost to herself. But she's always trying to make money. She's always trying to hustle. If you look at her social media feed, she uses all these public appearances to try and generate revenue for whatever thing it might be that she's doing, whether that's pornographic or not. So I think Americans would kind of respect the hustle, but also see her as a porn star, which is not something that people love.
Jane, how is the trial going to kind of develop over the next few days? I believe Stormy Daniels is due later back in court. How do you think this trial is going to go on for?
Yeah, she's due to be cross-examined again, I would imagine, for most of the rest of today's proceedings, because she only had a couple of hours of cross-examination on Tuesday. So we're into, I think, the third week of the trial. It's expected to last somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks. She is definitely one of the star witnesses, but we have yet to hear from Karen McDougal, the Playboy model, who also claims that she had an affair with Trump and was paid for it. We're yet to hear from Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer. So there are a couple of big blockbuster names to come still in this trial.
Freddie, Trump keeps getting threatened with jail time over violations of gag orders. What do you make of that and the sort of likelihood that he is going to get actually sent to jail, which would be quite a spectacle, wouldn't it?
In terms of a conviction, I mean, technically, yes, he can go to jail for this if he's found guilty. I just don't know how that's going to play out, and nobody does, really. I think it's highly likely he will be found guilty, but may escape jail time. I can't see how it's going to shape up, and I don't think anyone can, really. But this is the one of his indictments that will be resolved before the election. I think the expectation is that the other ones will be kicked down until 2025.
And actually, the Florida case has already been postponed indefinitely. That news came through yesterday. So there's only 2 more that are even being, looking like they might be scheduled. And certainly, as Freddie says, they won't be until after, certainly until after the election. So this is a key one in terms of where Trump's going to be living in the run-up to the election.
Yeah, and I suppose as a sort of final question I want to ask you both, how much is this actually harming Donald Trump? And we talked there about how the American public might view Stormy Daniels, but is this kind of shenanigans, is it taking his energy away from the campaign trail, from sending a different message to voters? What's really the impact this is having on Donald Trump's reputation and on the polls as we approach that November presidential election?
Well, I think, it's been shown that you can see from the moment that mugshot was taken of him in Fulton County jailhouse, that his polls have gone up and up and up and up. I think it is possible, and polls have also suggested, that a lot of independents or swing voters will not support Donald Trump if he's a convicted felon. But again, we haven't put that to the test, so we don't know. And I think what's obvious is that a lot of Americans are disgusted by what Trump calls the weaponization of the justice system, because it is obviously political. And I think anybody who denies that is deluded. And I think Americans do find it a bit disgusting. And Americans also have a respect for the office of the presidency, even if it's held by an absurd figure like Donald Trump. They don't think a president should be treated in the way that Donald Trump is being treated. And so they do sympathize with him. It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out if he's a convicted felon. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think every time Donald Trump appears on the steps of a courthouse, you can hear the cash rolling into his coffers. It's just, he's very, very good at making money out of every single appearance, and his supporters love to back him financially, especially when he claims, it's a witch hunt, and it's a political trial. I do think the one thing that this trial is doing is it's denying him the opportunity to hold the sort of big public rallies that he loves holding at this point in a campaign stage. So in that sense, he's very much grounded by it, which I think he and his campaign team will find incredibly frustrating, because it stops him getting out and pressing the flesh. If he were to go to jail, again, that would be something that would prevent him from holding the sort of campaign he likes to hold. But I think it is debatable. I think it could go either way, how much it's harming him or how much it's helping him.
Freddie, a few weeks ago we had a cover on political lawfare and how basically the judicial system is being used in the US, but now increasingly in the UK, to kind of prosecute political enemies and those people don't approve of. Do you think at all the tide is turning in this area? We've seen a lot of kind of increasingly politicization of the judiciary, as you talked about, over the last 20 years. Do you think the tide is now finally turning?
No, I'd say overall, if you look at democracies, we see this more and more, this resorting to the courts when the way the people vote doesn't please, powerful people. I think this is a growing phenomenon. I think America's at the very sort of tip of the spear, as it were, because it has such a politicized legal system. But I think it's interesting that it's not actually innately American. There's nothing in the Constitution that forces it to have this very political legal system where people in legal authority are elected. It's a Jacksonian development, and I think America may eventually roll back. But for now, no. I think we're at peak lawfare at the moment.